All right. Hey, everybody. Scott here with the 100-Day Journey. I'm just starting. I'm with Dr. Rebecca Miller. She is an absolute rock star, a friend from Genius Network, and she's the one who's got me. She was the first person to say, before you do all this, you got to get everything checked, right?
Yeah.
Gut, shit, piss, blood, everything.
All of it.
All of it. So, Rebecca's going to walk me through my results. This is open for the world. I'm basically I'm going to be full-on open with weight, with blood, I've got the constant glucose monitor, I've got Hapbee being used, my aura, the Whoop. The whole world's going to see everything anyway, so we might as well just get it out there. So, we're going to walk through the results. The one thing we didn't do is epigenetics, right? We were just talking about this.
I didn't do genetic testing on you, and what I was saying is that some of the tricky thing with interpreting genetic testing is genes can always be turned on or off by your nutritional status, by your gut health, by your environment. So just having a certain genetic trait doesn't automatically predict a certain outcome.
Okay, so I will do that at a follow-up with DNA Company and Mansoor Muhammad. But today, we're basically going to hit, what are the main things that we're going to go over today? So blood work is the big one.
Well, I only printed out the relevant pages, but there's over 200 pages of results that we have on you.
Okay.
So, yeah, we did blood, we did urine, we did stool. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff I found, but the good news is all the stuff that we found can be addressed. Okay,
and then maybe as we're going through this, you could say, here are some of the things that you are good on, so that people watching know, like, it's good to at least check these. Yeah, that's right.
Is that what you're trying to get at?
Yeah. So we did a ton of things, right, on the list. There was, over 50 different tests that you ran on whether it's a hormone or blood markers or diet. Okay. So we're going to go through it, not one by one. But first of all, what would you say to people that are, just so they know, why is it important to check this stuff out before you start a journey like I'm starting today?
Well, in your case, it gives you specific objective data on what the priorities are to improve your health, right? So you're not just
shooting in the dark.
Yeah, throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
Okay.
But in general, I'm a fan of doing detailed diagnostic tests on patients, not only because it gives me a specific map to follow of how to approach them clinically, but honestly, I do such detailed labs more for the patient. Because I do a ton of this stuff, and it becomes predictable where people have common deficits or imbalances. But if I just suggested to you or suggested to most people, I think you should take this or that vitamin or this or that probiotic. Compliance is usually pretty slim if you don't actually have data to substantiate why that's necessary.
Got it. Yeah, I think education is the main reason I'm doing all this. It's not just like fix my mind and body. It's like I need to learn this so that I can kind of do it for the rest of my life, right?
Well, and I think you're a good example too, because from what I understand, you generally feel pretty good, right? Like you're not having overt massive health issues, right?
Yeah.
And this is what I thought when I got into naturopathic and holistic type of medical care. I thought I would be doing mostly this, like helping relatively healthy people stay healthy.
Right.
But unfortunately, this is not what I usually do. What I usually do is I get people who are already in a very deep ditch medically and have some serious diagnoses, and now they're trying to do this. So it's a lot better to do it this way, where we can find this stuff.
Catch it early. Yeah.
Yeah, before it becomes...
Trust me, I have my mental breakdowns and freak out moments, but not like I can't get up and walk and function, or I've got like a massive like issue in my stomach or my back or my head. Like, this is why I want to know now, because I have family members where, like me, I'm 4 generations of entrepreneur and hard charger, and I think people in my family self-medicated with random things that aren't very good for you, and I want to make sure I understand what's going on in my body so that I don't make those mistakes. So you ready?
And right now, do you take anything as far as vitamins or supplements, or?
Not really. I mean, we just started doing Qualia, but it's more neurohacker stuff for sleep, stuff for my mind, but it's not necessarily supplement based. Right. So I'm looking right now to figure out what are the things I want to take in the morning or once a week or whatever it would be.
Got it. Okay.
Let's do this.
All right. So, right out of the gate, one of the biggest things so I did test you for a whole bunch of different food reactions.
Okay.
you were as high as you can get on both gluten and dairy.
I love gluten and dairy.
Well, we all do because they bind our opioid receptor, which is why they're comfort foods. But yeah, it wasn't...
Gluten and dairy. Bye.
It wasn't a borderline issue. You can see they grade it up to a scale of 6, and you were +6 on both.
Holy crap. Okay, I always thought that gluten and dairy, you would only know if you have like massive stomach aches or diarrhea or headaches whenever you had them.
You
no?
can. You
But
can. So what we're dealing with here is inflammation, not allergy.
Wow.
Which means a couple things. One, if you have an allergic reaction to a food, it's fairly obvious because it occurs typically within seconds to minutes of being exposed to it. Whereas an inflammatory reaction to a food, it's more common for it to be up to 24 to 48 hours later.
Okay.
And it can be systemic. So obviously some people get GI upset from foods, but it can affect your whole body. It can, for some people, it can cause joint pain. It can cause asthma symptoms. It can cause skin rashes. And for you, more than likely, it affects your brain chemistry. And of course, you see that most obvious in little kids, right? How certain foods that they eat can affect their mood and their behavior. But it's causing a major inflammatory reaction for you.
You should have just told me I have like massive heart issues or arthritis or something. This is a total game changer.
That's it. I quit. Forget it.
I'm out. I'm not doing this.
Cancel it. I'm done. Not giving it up.
Okay, so for the last couple weeks we were on like break and we were with the in-laws and I totally ate like crap. Like, you know, cookies and a bunch of because I knew this 100-day was coming, so I was like, I'm just going to enjoy.
Yeah.
And I was not feeling good.
Yeah.
Like I was feeling like crap.
Yeah.
Like literally like feeling like constipated, feeling like not very like lethargic, not like, and I'm wondering if that's because I ate a ton of gluten and dairy. Like it was all
so obviously you know a lot about neurotransmitters, right?
Yeah.
But most neurotransmitters occur where? In the intestines.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
This is really interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I thought it was just because I was like, you know, recovering from the last year of crazy and sleeping, but that doesn't make you constipated.
In the
or, like,
urine
sick.
test that you did, I actually measured markers for neurotransmitters. You actually didn't show any deficits in that with like dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, melatonin, like all that stuff measures well. So I don't think you're out of whack with your actual neurotransmitters, but it can manifest that way if you have this big inflammatory process going on in your gut.
Okay. So, So neurotransmitters, okay. But gluten and dairy, were there any foods that were like, oh, you're good with all this?
So the other big one that I think is actually the hardest to avoid that you had no reaction to is corn. Which I think it's harder to avoid corn than it is gluten or dairy.
So corn was fine.
You didn't show any trigger to that. But like if you think about it, cornstarch and corn sugar and corn syrup, like corn is in way more things than even gluten or dairy is.
Well, I'm gonna try to cut out sugar anyway. So but like straight
that
up
I'm not
corn.
Gonna disagree with, but
Okay.
Yeah. And then lectins and all that other stuff was really not elevated. So in all likelihood, even like
explain lectins to everybody.
So lectins, I mean, if you really want to dive into it, that's what that whole plant paradox thing is about. Everything that you would eat or drink has lectins on it. Lectins is how your immune system knows, oh, that was an apple, or that was an almond, or that was asparagus, or whatever.
Okay, got it.
What we've learned, though, is that the lectin content on certain foods can change seasonally, like if it's ripe or not, and the lectin content on foods has changed with things like genetic modification, right? So certain foods, depending on either when they were picked or how they were prepared, could have more of these inflammatory lectins on the surface.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow.
But
does that come back like positive for a lot of people, like high inflammation?
Especially people who have high inflammation or autoimmunity.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
And you didn't have any markers for autoimmune stuff, which is obviously that's a good thing. You did have.
What would that make me worry about for autoimmune check-ins?
Well, I mean, autoimmune, what that term literally means is that your immune system starts going after your own cells, and it's more a matter of like which cells are they going after. Are they going after blood cells or joints or soft tissue? But again, from this side of the fence, like in conventional medicine, if you have an autoimmune disease, the approach is typically to just suppress the immune system.
Yeah.
Whereas on this side of the fence, it's more to try to figure out why, because it's not typically a random occurrence. Like your body doesn't just go after itself for no reason. There's usually something else there that's precipitating
Got it.
that.
Okay. Wow. Okay. But what were you about to say? You were about to say,
So
but
you didn't have a lot of systemic inflammation, but you did have a high what's called myeloperoxidase, which is a marker for inflammation specifically in some of your small blood vessels.
okay.
And until proven otherwise, the two reasons I think you're showing that type of inflammation, one I already mentioned is the foods that you have a big reaction to, which is gluten and dairy. But the other thing that showed up here, and your buddy Dave will probably love this, is you did actually test positive for one of the intestinal parasites.
Like worms?
This one's not a worm, but
I
that
have an
was on the
intestinal
list.
parasite?
You have one. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. What is it?
So the one you have is called Tamiba Fragilis. This guy. So in the realm of parasites and worms, it's another one of those things that people are usually a little surprised when they study it, because it's more common than not to come across them. Some epidemiologists even estimate, in some cases, it's 70 to 80% of the world population has one or more
Oh
parasites.
my gosh.
So here in the U.S., we're a little less familiar with it because we chlorinate and fluoridate and irradiate everything.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you couldn't get exposed to it here in the U.S. And then certainly, depending on if or where all you've traveled in the world, there's some places where it's, you're kind of bound to come across some of that stuff.
Canada. I'm just kidding.
Probably not.
Canada. Mexico.
Could be.
I was in Mexico.
How recent?
Last year, actually.
But you don't
12
have
months
any
ago.
digestive symptoms other than the recent from
No.
eating crap with your in-laws?
Yeah. I mean, I always have minor. I feel like stool is always different, and I eat so, not poorly necessarily, but erratically. Like I will eat random stuff. Like I don't care. I'll eat anything. I literally don't not like anything. So I'm wondering if I don't know how do you get something like that? From bad water or from
Water, you can get it from fruits and vegetables if they're, carrying it or not washed or prepared properly, undercooked meat or seafood. I mean, there's a lot of places to come across it, and the reality is, as you go through life, it's not a matter of if you'll get exposed to a parasite, because at some point or another we all have. It's also more a matter of how hospitable are you to it actually taking up residence, and part of that too.
And how bad is it? Has it taken up residence?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that needs to be treated.
Oh dear. Needs treatment.
Yeah.
Oh dear. It's in red.
Yeah. You also had a lot of the good bacteria that were lacking, right? So some of the things that you can do besides, make sure your water is clean and your food is cleaned and cooked, to reduce your risk of parasites, is to keep your gut bacteria healthy and to make sure, which you do, you have sufficient digestive enzymes and stomach acid.
Okay.
Because with any type of foodborne pathogen, whether it's a parasite or a bacteria, none of it's ever 100% infectious, right? If you had 10 people eat the same meal that had food poisoning, typically only 3 or 4 people, depending on the pathogen, are going to get it. So why didn't the other 6? It's usually because they had some other factors in their gut that made them less susceptible.
What are the chances my wife also has it?
Well, they're
We
certainly
usually eat the same stuff.
they're certainly increased since you have it. I don't know if she's got any symptoms that would warrant checking.
Like what?
Usually GI stuff.
Okay.
Irritable bowel symptoms.
Yeah. How do you fix something like that?
Well, so that's the next conversation is, in the traditional realm, there's anti-parasitic medications. Certainly for people who have significant symptoms, that's often a route I go. But there are also a lot of naturally occurring anti-parasitics that can be useful.
Okay.
The other key piece is your gut bacteria. So I went through and circled a bunch of them, but there was at least a dozen what would be considered probiotic bacteria that should be abundant in your gut that you had little to none. This particular species of lactobacillus, you were literally at 0.
Holy crap.
So, but why that matters, you've heard of GABA, right, for the brain?
Explain.
GABA being one of your body's main calming neurotransmitters.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid. Gut bacteria ferment fiber from the diet into butyric acid. And then that butyric acid that's produced by your gut bacteria then is what becomes GABA, which keeps your nervous system calm.
Holy
right?
crap.
So this is like the big like gut-brain connection thing.
Wow, okay.
Well, so what's happening is your production of butyric acid
Yep, I get it.
should ideally be between like 5 and 12. Yours is at 1.
Wow.
And so that's where restoring all these good bacteria, but then you also have to make sure you consume adequate fiber in your diet. The reason which is very easy to do just in the form of getting in enough fruits and vegetables. Like there are of course ways to supplement fiber, but I don't think most people need to supplement fiber if they're consuming adequate fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
But if you don't eat enough fiber in your diet, if you take a whole bunch of good probiotics, those bacteria feed on fiber. So not eating enough fiber, it would be like you just threw a whole bunch of fish in the lake and then you didn't feed the fish.
Probiotics
They're not going to
feed
live that
off.
long.
Okay, this is awesome to know. Okay. I think everybody should film their doctor visits. Because half this stuff I have to go back and like think through.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's generous of you that you're doing this because this obviously is helping you learn, but I think you're going to hopefully help a lot of other people.
Okay, so I don't have at least 12 main forms of gut bacteria that helps me process things that help my neurotransmitters, help me digest. The biggest issue though would be the GABA calming the body issue.
Well, I think that's what's happened recently when you said that you've had like some breakdown. That's
like
at least
stress.
part of it. Yeah.
Tons of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And it's because of potentially lack of fiber that means that my butyric acid, which feeds off the fiber,
so the bacteria,
and helps calm the body through GABA.
You're missing a lot of the bacteria, but if all we did was give you the right probiotics, if you didn't also consume fiber, you still wouldn't get the brain benefits because it's the bacteria that ferment that fiber into butyric acid. Wow. So if you're still having a lot of symptoms of stress and overwhelm and anxiety and irritability, there are plenty of times where it makes sense to actually supplement butyric acid.
Okay.
Which helps a ton. Like if you give butyric acid to somebody who's in a huge state of stress, it usually calms them down, especially kids. But what I tell people is if you don't fix the underlying issue, which is the bacterial imbalance or the dietary deficit, you just end up having to take butyric acid forever to feel better.
This is fascinating, by the way, because not being able to calm myself down, sometimes I feel like I'm crazy. I know I'm like entrepreneurial, my mind's all going all the time, but I literally have felt like in the last few months, I'm like, why can't I calm down? I'm trying everything, massages and like, I mean, I do use the calm signal and relax signal daily, which kind of gives me a couple hours of peace.
Do you know if that signal is pushing GABA or has GABA?
I don't have any idea. I'll have to talk to our science team on that. But if it's connected directly to that, it's a nice reprieve. I mean, it's probably why I love the signal so much. I mean, I don't know if it's doing GABA, but it is relaxing me. The endocannabinoids and all these different things to relax my body, but I feel like that's probably one of the core issues, especially if it's at like 1 instead of 5 to 12. Oh, these are all the...
That's what I was just telling you about the butyric acid.
Yeah, wow. So do you think butyric acid supplements is a good way to go right now? Or just eat a bunch more fiber and take some probiotics?
Are you still in a state where you feel like you can't?
I mean, I run 3 companies with 500 employees and we just went public. You tell me. I can't tell. I'm always in a constant state of like crazy. Yeah. And I thought that was normal, but I would love to get this under control by any means necessary because I would love some general peace.
I will so obviously at the end of this, I'm going to give you a list of suggestions of what I think you ought to take and do to fix this.
Now, is it a take forever thing or is it a take until I get balanced?
The probiotics, especially if you eat a healthy diet to sustain it, there's also been a lot of research that's been done that's shown if you do a really high dose of probiotics for a short amount of time, which is typically like 6 to 8 weeks,
Okay.
you can often still find those good bacteria even 6 to 12 months later,
Okay.
versus taking lesser amounts of probiotics every single day.
Okay.
So I'm more of a proponent of that type of dosing schedule for probiotics, where you kind of bolus dose them for a month or two.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to do that.
But as far as like some of the vitamins and supplements that you're lacking, some of those tend to be a little bit more of a long-term
Okay.
thing.
So this isn't like the yogurt little like milk-looking thing I can just drink once a day. This is like heavy duty.
Well, do you remember at the beginning where we said that you don't react well to dairy?
Oh shoot. I don't know if it's milk. I don't know. It's like gut bacteria.
I mean, there are non-dairy forms of yogurt, yeah.
Okay. Oh man. Okay.
Oh.
This is awesome. I mean, sucks, but I'm encouraged.
So the other thing that's interesting that's likely lifestyle related and or, I don't know, doing all those things, how consistent you've been able to be with exercise, but A1C is a 90-day average for your blood sugar,
Yeah.
and yours is borderline high. So besides what you eat, one of the best things you can do to regulate blood sugar is to maintain muscle mass, because muscle is what uses insulin and sugar even when you're sitting still. So I don't have, like,
Wow.
what is your, do you have a current regimen as far as, I'm
Getting
assuming
muscle?
that's part of your 100-day strategy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whitney Jones is helping with physique work,
Okay.
with muscle build. We were
Okay.
gonna do cut fat, because I'm at like 14.8, 15% almost body fat. We're gonna try to get to 10.
Okay.
I was at like
Which would
12
happen
a couple years ago.
on its own if you build muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also doing a bunch of strength work, like 3 times a week, 4 times a week, heavy strength,
Yeah.
to build chest, arm, thigh, and then ab.
Yeah.
Okay, so explain why muscle helps with blood sugar.
So muscle burns calories even when you're sitting still, but specifically glucose and insulin. So that's what's going to be interesting about you wearing the continuous glucose monitor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had 12 people wear that monitor, even if you had all of them do the exact same thing as far as the type of workout and the type of diet, you're going to see 12 different outcomes, right?
Okay, yeah.
And it's because we all have different, not only blood chemistry, but also body composition, right? So that's why there's never going to be one set of recommendations as far as like diet or workout, because we all have a different response to stuff.
Yep.
But where somebody like you who's not overweight could even have issues with blood sugar, besides that
Yeah,
you
diabetes
might be
runs in the family.
consuming too much carbohydrates, it also may be because of your current level or lack thereof of fitness. And a lot of people, especially a lot of women, end up with blood sugar issues even if they work out a lot, because they're just doing a ton of cardio.
Got
Right?
it.
So beyond age 30, we're all losing muscle every single year if you're not doing something to
Yeah, to
retain
fix it.
So that's why metabolic
Wow.
issues get worse.
Okay, so what am I actually at there? And you said borderline high.
So 5.6
Like,
is
am I pre-diabetic levels?
not yet, but one more decimal point and you would be in that category.
To the 100th or like a 10th or?
So this is a percentage. So you're
Oh
at
my
5.6%, and typically 5.7 is in that category.
All right.
But you have normal insulin, which means it's not going to take a huge amount of effort for you to get this down. The people who really struggle to see changes in their body composition or in their metabolism are people who have really high insulin, because insulin is the hormone that regulates metabolism and glucose.
Got
So
it.
your insulin's only at 6, which means it's not going to take a massive effort for you to fix this, whereas somebody who had a fasting insulin of like 30, they could still get it better. It would just take a lot more.
My fasting insulin is what?
6.
6. And bad is what? 30?
Fasting insulin should be in the single digits.
Okay.
In a fasting state, insulin shouldn't really be above 9.
Okay. So I'm in balance there. So when it comes to
What
cutting
I'm
out,
getting at is I think you just need to get in shape,
yeah,
and it's going to be fine.
which is crazy because I've done CrossFit like 6 years.
Recently?
Yeah.
Oh, 'cause I was
I
gonna
do
say,
it like
this is a
3
90-day
times a
average.
week.
Okay.
Like at least. Sometimes I was doing 5 times a week. I think it's just bad eating mixed with stress.
Yes.
Where my workouts have sucked in the last
So
year.
the stress thing is interesting because they've done studies on sugar where they.
I think my mission, by the way, is to help people reduce stress. I have felt that in my spirit for years because I deal with so much stress, and I feel like I've tried everything to get rid of it. And I'm learning a million things now, but...
Well, stress is big because they've done studies with diabetics where, like, they'll take a huge group of diabetics and they'll feed them all a big giant bowl of pasta, which is probably like one of the worst things you could feed a diabetic. But then they'll split them into 2 groups, and one group watches like a horror movie and the other group watches a comedy.
Yeah?
They'll check their blood sugar and their insulin after.
No
Kid
way.
you not, even with the same meal,
No
the
way.
ones who watch the horror movie, their insulin and their sugar will be higher than the ones who watch the comedy.
Oh my gosh.
So,
That's crazy.
I mean, now that you have your own metrics, you can play with stuff like
I'm
that.
gonna totally be learning. Okay, so when it comes to eating less sugar versus getting more muscle, which one's more important?
They're both important.
There's nothing that's like, because it's not like
You
if you
can't
gain more
out-train
muscle.
a bad diet, put it that way.
I know that to a degree. I just didn't know like how much of a deal this muscle gain is. Like, should I be focusing on adding 10 pounds of muscle over the next 100 days, or should I focus on literally no sugar for 100 days? Which one would have more of an impact?
Well, it's especially obviously processed or refined sugar, right? So
Right.
because you don't have an issue with insulin, like I don't need you to be on a strict low carb diet, right? You got to
Okay.
do that if you have insulin resistance. But I certainly can't endorse you going out and drinking soda and energy drinks and all that fun stuff.
All right. Can you explain to everyone processed versus refined, just so we're all on the same page?
So refined sugars are going to be things, obviously like sugar, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup. But of course they put it in a lot of health foods as,
Right.
Like agave syrup or brown rice syrup. I mean, that's all sugar too.
What would you put stevia in?
Stevia is not caloric,
Okay.
but in excess, not only is it something that could potentially disrupt insulin for some people, which again isn't a measurable issue for you, but stevia also in excess has some concern over mitochondrial function. So stevia is better than any other artificial sweetener you definitely don't want to do.
Got it. Okay.
So small amounts of stevia is okay for most people.
What about honey? Honey was in my diet, like, be careful of sugars, but like a little bit of honey is not the end of the world. But now I'm wondering if...
It's not the end of the world, again, for you, because you don't have an insulin issue, right?
Yep.
But you're going to be wearing the CGM, so just see
what happens.
See what happens if or when you...
I feel like a
do some of this
cyborg.
stuff.
I'm going to be a cyborg for the next 3.5 months.
Kind of.
Half machine learning. Okay. So processed versus refined. Watch out for all refined. Processed, I can be a little bit careful. I don't have to be on low carb.
Besides your blood sugar being borderline high, the other reason I want you to avoid sugars, and I'm jumping ahead here,
Okay.
but in that urine test that you did, there was also a really high marker for yeast overgrowth.
I have a yeast infection?
Well, we all do to some extent, because yeast...
I thought only girls get that.
Well, hopefully you don't have a vaginal yeast infection, and we'd have something to talk about.
Okay.
No, so we all have yeast in and on our bodies. It's not something that's abnormal to be there.
Okay.
It's just not supposed to be so abundant. So this is a metabolic byproduct from yeast, and you can see the expected value is going to be under 4, and yours was at 14.
Oh.
But what I suspect is part of that is dietary, especially, do you drink alcohol?
Do I? Did I?
Did I?
I am not. I am allowing 1 shot a week.
But you did.
But yeah, oh yeah, holidays, you kidding me? The last 2 months?
Yeah. So not only, beer and
Not
wine
beer, really. That's the
contain
thing I'm
yeast.
surprised. Okay, whiskey is basically like the go-to for me. I don't really drink beer. I feel like my stomach hurts after a beer or two, so I don't really drink beer.
Well, and a lot of whiskey is wheat.
Rye and bourbon and...
Gluten.
I can't have whiskey anymore?
It has to be gluten-free. I quit. Forget it.
Unbelievable. I always thought I was avoiding like wheat and carbs and stuff by going to beer. I don't know why I thought that.
Well, so I'm not an expert in grain alcohols, but there are a lot of them that are derived from wheat or barley or rye, which are gluten. So,
Wow,
I mean,
okay.
there are grain alcohols that are gluten-free, but you got to make sure of that. But yeah, you had a marker for high yeast. And so I think why you're having some of that yeast overgrowth, some of it probably was related to diet, sugar, alcohol intake. But again, you had some really big deficits in the good bacteria you're supposed to have too, right?
Yep.
So if you are missing all those good bacteria, that also allows the yeast that's already there to get out of control.
Got it. So yeast overgrowth. And that's usually from alcohol?
I wouldn't say usually, but alcohol is a common contributing factor because certain types of alcohol, of course, contain yeast, but all alcohol can feed yeast.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, definitely like a couple glasses of whiskey.
So, and I don't know how much you
A
know
day.
about people who've got candida or yeast in their body, but common symptoms are things like fatigue and brain fog,
Wow.
right? So
Yeah.
that could have easily contributed also to...
Man. All right. This is insane. So, is there anything for that other than just I'm limiting alcohol basically altogether?
I don't think, not only because of the values, but also like I'm a big proponent of like I don't just treat the labs, I treat the patient, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not having any massive symptoms in that regard, I don't see an indicator, at least not at this point, to consider prescribing an antifungal.
Okay.
Because antifungal drugs are not gentle on the body. They've got a lot
Right.
of...
It's potentially correctable with the diet change.
I expect so. Yeah, and the microbial change.
Okay. So is your thought we do this again in like 3.5 months and see what happens?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. The
I mean, I'd like to do that.
The anti-parasitic is more what we need to do to get rid of your
Yeah, this is
passenger.
okay. Am I like more effed up than the normal human?
No.
You wouldn't know about my insides, but this stuff.
No, and that's what I'm saying is that that's why I'm an advocate.
See, everyone listening, everyone needs to do something like this.
That's why I'm an advocate of doing this stuff because, I mean, you kind of had an idea because you weren't feeling as good as you're...
No, really.
wanting to
So
feel.
I'm a high functioning person. I work hard in anybody, which made me think I was healthier than most people. I literally CrossFit since 2014, like between 3 and 5 times a week. At the highest it was 5, now it's probably like 2 to 3, but. And I'm like probably top 5% in the gym, 5 to 8%. And so I always thought everything was okay. And
You're not in a handicap gym, right? No, I'm just kidding.
I got no problems. Well, I work out with the people over 75 at 6 a.m.
Exactly.
I whoop all them. It's all
I
older
work out at the
women.
senior center.
It's in the pool.
I crushed it.
Oh gosh. Continue.
Just checking.
No, like actual. Okay.
So on your blood chemistry, the one thing that also came back, and this could have just been that morning,
Oh.
but it did show that you were dehydrated.
Yeah.
I mean, how hydrated or dehydrated
No,
you are can change in 20 minutes,
So I've heard you have to like drink your weight in ounces a day.
at least.
There's no way in hell I'm drinking 200 ounces of water.
No, not in ounces, in kilograms. So your weight in kilograms, in ounces.
Okay, good, because that's a lot of ounces of water.
Yeah.
So I'm like 210. What's that in kilograms?
So that'd be at least 2 liters a day.
2 liters a day.
But more if you're, working out a lot or if it's, July, that type of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, my goal is to try to wake up every morning and get like 12 to 15 ounces in right off
There's
the bat.
apps for that too.
Oh, I bet. I think that's just going to be part of my routine. I'm going to build the Tiny Habit BJ Fogg model, and first thing in the morning, I'm going to do that with whatever supplements I'm doing. And just, that's first thing. All right. Dehydrated. How bad dehydrated?
I mean, it should be under 295 and yours is at 303.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
295 what?
It's what's called milliosmol, so it's osmolarity. It's how concentrated or how dilute a fluid is.
Okay. What does hydration do to like the rest of this stuff? Like gut and food processing and neurotransmitters, all that kind of stuff.
I would say it has a less direct impact on neurotransmitters, but certainly on, gut motility and circulation, and our body is mostly water.
Am I not circulating very well?
No, I believe
Am I just
so.
like a stagnant swamp ogre?
Probably not. Probably not.
This is what happens when you take a company public.
Don't do it. It's a bad
Honestly,
idea.
I think that's what effed me all up. All right, keep going.
So what's also interesting, and again, I'm going to tie this back to your gut bacteria, is where some of your hormones are at. So have you ever heard, and I'm actually surprised how many people don't know this, that let's say, for example, a woman is taking a birth control pill and then she has to take an antibiotic. Are you aware that after taking an antibiotic, the birth control pill doesn't work for a while?
No clue.
Yeah, so that's actually...
Also, I'm married.
Well, it's still something I think a lot of people should be aware of. But the reason that is because the bacteria in our gut metabolize our hormones. And so if you alter those bacteria, which you inevitably do with an antibiotic, you also, at least temporarily, alter hormone metabolism. In fact, that's why they use so many antibiotics in agriculture.
Yeah.
It's less about controlling the spread of infection, and it's more because if they alter the bacteria in their gut, it can be used as what's called a growth promoter.
Yeah.
Meaning they can feed them a third to a half less food and they get just as big.
Is that why our blueberries are like 4 times as big as they were like 30 years ago?
Well, no, I'm more talking about what they feed like the cows and the pigs.
Oh, I know, but I'm seeing all these hormones added to everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay.
what you came back high on in your stool sample is an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase.
I was high on that?
Yeah.
How'd you know I was high on something? Oh, like my levels were high. I wasn't high on anything, I promise.
High on Hapbee.
That's right. That's why I do happy.
So
That's a long word.
Beta-glucuronidase.
Jeez.
So your liver metabolizes hormones via a process called glucuronidation.
Okay.
But if you have a high amount of this enzyme from your gut bacteria, then what happens is basically your gut bacteria can undo everything your liver just did, and you end up reabsorbing a bunch of stuff that we're actually trying to get rid of.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Including hormones.
Wait, slow down and say that again so I can write it down. So because I'm high on this...
So one of the ways that your liver detoxes things, so to speak, is a process called glucuronidation.
Okay.
So gut bacteria, some of them, can produce this enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, which basically just undid everything your liver just tried to do to get rid of some of that stuff.
It undoes what my liver's trying to excrete out of the body.
So it can affect your hormone metabolism, but it also can affect your ability to detoxify certain things. So
Jeez.
I don't know if you're already aware or not, but there's a lot of environmental things that mimic hormones, like plastics, pesticides, flame retardants, right? A lot of that stuff mimics estrogen.
Okay.
And so people who have this high beta-glucuronidase, not only can it alter their hormone metabolism, but it also can alter their ability to get rid of some of those environmental toxins.
Okay, so now that you know all this, oftentimes my stomach, though it doesn't like hurt like a sickness, if someone presses on it, or like if one of my kids, like my 2-year-old, sits on my stomach, it'll hurt all of a sudden.
Yeah.
When I have like, I have ab muscles,
Yeah.
they're just like all of a sudden they'll start to hurt.
Yeah.
Is that related to a lot of this like gut bacteria issues, and I'm potentially like reabsorbing stuff my liver's trying to get rid of and things like that?
Well, like I said, you do have a lot of bacterial imbalances. You do have evidence of some fungal overgrowth and a parasite. But what you don't have, you don't actually have a lot of inflammation in your gut.
I don't know how that's possible. When the doctor laughs.
If you eat certain things that flare it, yeah, it's going to be bloated and swollen and tender. But see, these are all markers for inflammation. So I do a lot of these tests on patients. It's actually not common to find no inflammation at all.
Boom.
Put that in the plus column.
Yeah, no inflammation in the gut. Just everything else bad.
No, not everything.
Okay, so can you go back real quick to the alters hormone metabolism? So this beta-glucuronidase.
You're close, yeah.
Whatever. It's absorbing a lot of what my liver's trying to get rid of. How is that affecting my hormone metabolism?
So it's altering it.
Okay.
And that's what I was saying, because you also have evidence of some imbalances with the testosterone, estrogen, and you're probably familiar with DHEA, which comes from your adrenals.
Okay.
So I drew a bunch of arrows here.
I was betting my adrenals were screwed up.
Not really, actually.
Really?
Other than your DHEA was a bit lacking, and DHEA can be used to produce testosterone.
Okay.
So what I'm getting at is
Testosterone was low.
some of these hormone imbalances are probably because of a lack of DHEA,
Okay.
but some of it's also because of your gut bacteria is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So fixing this stuff, yeah, it's going to improve, you know, your gut health, your nutrient status, your brain chemistry, but it's also going to have a positive effect on how your body uses and metabolizes its hormones.
Got it. Wow. Okay. So wait, what is testosterone supposed to be at? Which one is this? Testosterone, and that's free testosterone.
Yeah, so supposed to be is a relative term, because here's the other thing you may or may not know.
So I'm in the realm of okay, just not
normal range changes annually. So every lab and every hospital has a slightly different normal range because it's based on their own patient data.
Got it.
And what's interesting about a lot of these hormones is a lot of these ranges have skewed significantly just even in the last decade or two. And again, a lot of that stuff, if you ask me, is environmental. That we're seeing, you know, in both genders, we're seeing testosterone levels drop and we're seeing thyroid levels drop. And so a lot of these ranges just keep kind of shrinking or expanding relative to the population. So what I wrote in is what some of those targets used to be.
Wow. Okay. So testosterone
But
total.
I don't think at this point it makes sense to put you on any of those hormones. I think it makes the most sense at this point. I am going to recommend a DHEA supplement that you take. But again, the bigger target to me is the gut.
Do you think that'll fix a lot of these other things?
In all likelihood, yeah. That and getting more targeted with your diet and your training.
But just because I came across with these hormones, I thought you just said my issue before was with this beta glucuronidase or whatever. I can't absorb it very well.
Your gut bacteria is how it's
right.
affecting how your
So
hormones
just because
are.
it's in my body doesn't mean I'm actually using it very well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So it needs to be greater than 300. Is that the idea?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
then
like I said, at the end of this, I'm going to give you a list of suggestions. That'll be one of the things that I suggest is.
And then you wrote something next to the free testosterone, not the normal number, which is
So target value used to be around 18 to 20, and yours is at 9.
Okay. Got it.
So yeah, I mean, depending on how things go over the next 3 months, 6 months, whatever, you know, that is another really common thing these days, is that a lot of people, despite every effort with their lifestyle, they're still having really low hormone levels, and that's why you're hearing more and more people on various regimens. So it's an option, but right now I think it's more related to your adrenal function and to your gut health.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Okay.
I know, I feel like every page I'm like, well, and then there's this, and then there's this. So
How many more problems do I have? Oh my gosh.
I mean, if you ask me, it's ultimately just one problem. It's your
The gut.
gut and your nutritional status, yeah.
I have a worm.
You do, well, it's a parasite.
Maybe the worm ate all the bacteria.
Probably not.
I'm not the doctor. Okay.
So you were a little bit anemic, and then you also had what are called megaloblastic, meaning large red blood cells. So that's also likely, again, gut, and I know I keep saying that, but really, like, that's your control panel for everything. And you were really low on a lot of vitamins. And so you're not only not making enough red blood cells, but the red blood cells that you have are large.
And why is that bad?
Well, red blood cells carry oxygen, so if you don't have enough red blood cells in your body, then you don't have enough oxygen in your body. And when they're big, they don't circulate as well as they would if they were normal size. But you are depleted of almost all of the B vitamins. And B vitamins are what you need not only to make blood cells, but, you know, a lot of your brain chemistry and metabolism and all that good stuff comes from B vitamins.
All right.
So, yeah, you're going to have a lot more gas in your tank when this is all said and done.
Boom. Think what I could do with a full gas tank.
Right?
Wow. Okay. So just the vitamins for vitamin B?
Yeah, we're about to get into that in just a second,
Okay,
all the
cool.
nutrients. You can put PSA in the plus column also. Prostate antigens look fantastic.
All right.
So there's a marker called free PSA that's more of a predictor for long-term risk of prostate health, and you want it to be above 30%, and yours is at 44%.
Boom. Okay. I'm going to lean back in my chair on that one.
You also didn't have, so IgE it's not a specific marker for what you would be allergic to. It's just an overall marker for are you allergy prone?
Yeah.
And yours was only at 18, which is not high. But that matters too in terms of brain chemistry, because histamine is actually a stimulant. That's why most people, if they take an antihistamine, if they take an allergy medicine, it makes them drowsy.
Yeah.
If you have too much histamine in your body, that can also contribute to stress, anxiety, insomnia, like all sorts of neurological stuff. So for some people, it's actually a histamine process is why they're struggling with their brain chemistry.
Not me, though.
Not you.
So that's why you said allergy is not really the issue.
No, not for you.
Okay.
You have
So-
a lot of inflammation, but not any evidence of allergies.
So it's not related to histamines. Okay.
So now we're getting into the micronutrient, which is the panel where we check all the vitamins and minerals.
Okay.
So this is the other thing I'm a big fan of doing on just about everybody. And again, it's more for you than for me, because anybody who doesn't take anything in the realm of vitamins or supplements, it's kind of par for the course to have all these deficits, right? But if I was just to suggest to you or any other person, oh, I think you should take this, this, and this, yeah, some people will comply with that suggestion just based off the recommendation, but most people aren't going to do it.
Unless there's
Certainly not long term,
empirical
unless
evidence.
there's data
Yeah.
to support why.
I'm in that category.
Me too. I think that's why I had to become a doctor.
Or if I get scared into it or something.
Yeah.
Like my dentist, my buddy Gabe, was like, hey, if you don't floss, that bacteria goes into your gut and messes with you pretty bad. So I've flossed ever since then. I didn't before much. Now I do.
It's true.
And I still have bad gut. Okay, keep going.
So what you're looking at here is everything that's in this column is what's in the serum or the plasma, which is the liquid part of the blood. And then everything that's in this column is what's inside the blood cells.
Okay.
And there's a tiny dotted line down the center of each of these that's the actual average. And then there's 2 statistical deviations from the mean on either side. And then of course all these dots are where did you measure on that curve. Like this is basically a visual of the bell curve. And so again, you're still comparing your nutrient status to the average of
Right.
everyone who's taken this test, right?
Yep.
So really you kind of want to at least be towards the middle for a lot of these.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I went through and I circled all the ones that were either close to or in some cases below the red line. But then the other thing I did is I wrote in what all the active forms are of each of these nutrients, because another reason why some people, and even myself before I started doing a lot of these tests, why you could be taking sometimes a ton of vitamins and not really seeing any benefit is because a lot of vitamins, even in the professional realm, but certainly in the retail realm, a lot of vitamins are not in their active form. And of course, a lot of them aren't in a sufficient dose. In which case, if you take a vitamin that's too small of a dose or not the right form,
Yeah.
generally it's not going to hurt you, but it also may not be doing anything to help you.
Got it.
So that's, yeah, I just wrote that down just more for your reference is what the active form is of each of those.
Okay.
But yeah, B5 here.
This one was low. This one was low.
Yeah, vitamin A, you were really low. Which is a big deal for your immune system and your hormone balance too.
Jeez.
So, vitamin A is something we go through almost by the truckload here because it's also a really good antiviral.
Yeah. Get
Yeah.
me some vitamin A. All right.
And then you're also really low in B5, which incidentally that can show up as an adrenal issue because your adrenals need a lot of B5 to function. Do you take something that has B6 and B12 in it? Do you know? Is that in that supplement you mentioned? Oh, okay, because
I
those
don't
were
know.
the only ones that you actually had a good amount of was B6 and B12.
I can go look.
Maybe.
Okay.
So vitamin D, vitamin E, like a lot of these fat solubles were low too.
Vitamin D, vitamin E. Fats what?
Fat soluble.
Oh, jeez.
So that's why most of the time for myself when I take vitamin D, but also when I recommend it to patients, it's pretty rare that you're only low in vitamin D. And that's why the vitamin D I take, it actually has A and K2 and E in it.
Okay.
Same with the B vitamins. Like I just have you take a really good active B complex.
Yeah.
Because it gets kind of silly if you end up one of these and one of these. And one, so
right.
I'll consolidate this.
I need like 1 or 2.
Well, it's not going to be 1 or 2, but it'll be as few as
100.
As few as I can. Yeah.
Can you just give me like a shot once a week?
Yeah, but that's still... You can't put the fat solubles in an IV.
Oh, fair.
A lot of the B vitamins we can.
Okay.
So remember how I said you were borderline anemic? The other thing that's going to make that worse is you're also really low in a mineral called manganese.
Okay.
Manganese is what you need for an enzyme called SOD, superoxide dismutase. It's what gets oxygen off of your red cells and into your tissues. So if you're really low in manganese, at a cellular level, it almost feels like you're at high altitude.
Whoa. Okay. So oh wow. So that is what's affecting the anemic issue.
Well, it's compounding it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is doubling it almost.
Yeah. I mean, do you go to altitude often, or if so, do you struggle when you're at altitude?
Sometimes. I was just skiing for the last week. And I mean, I'm a really good skier, so I wasn't putting that much energy in, but a couple times I hiked or we did some intense moguls, and I was like, dang, I'm wheezing.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also not uncommon. I have some patients that used to struggle a lot at altitude, and after correcting, any of these types of variables, they're like, oh yeah, I can go up and I don't get headaches or short of breath anymore.
Okay, so it pulls the oxygen from the blood cells to the body?
Mm-hmm. It's what you need to transfer the oxygen into your tissues.
Got it. And that's super low. Okay.
You're really low in zinc and copper too. So, I mean, it's better to be low in both of those because zinc and copper work together. So it's actually a bigger issue to be high in one and low in the other. And of course, zinc has been getting a ton of attention lately as an antiviral. So I've had a ton of people that take way too much zinc and they end up depleting themselves of copper.
Oh gosh. Okay.
But so what's going to happen is I'm going to recommend a trace mineral that's got a mineral complex that's going to have a lot of this stuff in it. So the other big thing on here as far as your brain goes, I'm sure you're familiar with the term nootropics.
Uh-huh.
So 2 of the most important...
Hold on, I gotta get in a new page.
...things in that category are choline and inositol.
Yeah. Chlorine and inositol.
Choline, not chlorine. Chlorine's not going to help your brain.
Nootropics. I don't even think my camera has enough storage for this. Okay.
Uh-oh.
No, you're good. So, nootropics for the brain.
So, choline and inositol make up your cell membranes. And so if those are lacking, your cells basically don't communicate as easily to one another.
I'm writing this. Inositol. So they make up the cell membrane?
Yeah.
Okay. So why would it be bad that they're not communicating with each other very well? Explain that more.
So we have now what are called electron microscopes, where you can actually look at a live cell and you can watch things like DNA unfold and you can watch proteins being built and enzymes moving around. But if you look at a cell that has a healthy membrane, it should look very fluid and flexible, almost like a jellyfish.
Okay.
But if you look via an electron microscope at a cell that either lacks these phospholipids, or the other thing that's way out of whack for you is your omega-3, omega-6 ratio, because besides phospholipids, the other thing that makes up your membranes is fats. What effectively happens is your cells end up stiff and rigid and hard.
Wow.
Which everything else we do, whether it's vitamins, hormones, insulin, thyroid, burning calories, all this stuff requires moving easily across the membrane.
Yeah.
So if your cell membranes end up really rigid, a lot of stuff gets stuck in the mud, right? So restoring these, your cell membranes eventually over time become healthy again, everything all of a sudden is in high definition again.
Holy cow.
So, but on that note, if I jump...
Okay, quick happy question.
Yeah.
This technology is able to change the shape of the protein receptors on the cells. Mm-hmm. And we have people, every customer is different in how they experience it. Some people are like, the signal's too strong after 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then other people are like, I never felt it. 10 sessions in, we have 3-4% of people that are super low feelers.
Could be part of it, yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'm learning. This is crazy. Okay.
So the other thing that was really high, which
and
also
is that a trace mineral to be able to sell to somebody to?
No, these are what are called phospholipids.
You can't like take a vitamin for those?
Well, you can.
Oh, okay.
They're just not minerals.
No, I'm just learning as we go because this would be powerful to know because we have, like Dave Asprey's a good example. He feels all of these in like 10 seconds.
Yeah. But he's
Faster than
also
anybody.
done all of this stuff, right? Like think about all the stuff he's done with his nutrition and his gut health. And
Oh yeah, he's like the king of biohacking. Like that's his literal like encyclopedia name.
Right.
Father of biohacking.
Yeah, you show him this and he's gonna be like, oh boy.
Duh. He's
Yeah.
like, this is why you had a break.
Come on, Scotty. So you also had really high arachidonic acid,
Yeah.
which is a pro-inflammatory omega-6. And
Bad.
so your ratio omega-6 to omega-3, if you see here, it should be under 10.
70. What the hell does that mean?
It's likely what types of fats you eat in your diet.
Holy. Okay, explain. You mean like trans fats and
Well, those definitely have to go because those are
saturated?
like. But it also, this would typically suggest excess saturated fat in the form of animal protein. Is that
Wait,
fair?
I
Like,
eat a lot of meat.
yeah,
I eat too much meat.
probably.
I should never have come.
I'm not telling you to be vegan
I'm-
by any means. I just think we need
I
to.
was gonna be carnivore diet. I was gonna try it. Probably a terrible idea now.
Well, yeah, and it's also relative to the type of meat that you eat, right? Because some is more pro-inflammatory than others, depending on how it's raised and how it's prepared and so on.
Okay, you gotta simplify this for me and people watching. What is this level and why does it translate to me eating too much animal fat?
So your cell membranes, as I mentioned, are made of phospholipids and fatty acids, right? So
Yep.
depending on what type of fat you have in your body and what type of phospholipids you have, it literally changes the structure and the fluidity of that cell membrane. And everything else that happens in the body relies on communicating across that membrane. So what I tell people is if you don't have healthy cell membranes, it would be like trying to make a phone call in a canyon. Like every now and then you might catch a signal and get through,
Yeah.
but most of the time like you're not getting through.
Holy
Right?
cow.
Whereas if you restore these things, you end up with really healthy cell membranes again, and you end up, like you said, people who like respond really well, it's because everything is communicating quickly and easily
Yeah.
again.
Holy
But
cow.
it's also a big deal, big picture, the thing that I worry about the most, short term, what this is going to affect is inflammation. But long term, the two things that are heavily impacted by having the wrong type of fat in the body, one would be your brain health,
Yeah.
because your brain is mostly made of fat, and so not having the right ratios of this stuff would predispose you to things like dementia.
Okay.
But the other thing is cancer risk, because all that cancer is one of your own cells that starts growing too fast, right? But if your cells communicate easily and
yeah.
quickly and smoothly to each other, that's going to get detected and destroyed before it ever becomes anything. Whereas if those cell membranes aren't communicating properly, that can go on with less awareness of surrounding cells, right? So there's all sorts of historical stuff, and probably way beyond this discussion to go into,
Yeah.
of doctors who used to be able to get rid of cancer, and a lot of it was around lipid therapies, meaning they would restore the right type of fats into people's body, and it would actually eradicate the cancer that they had.
Okay, so what does that do with keto and like having a high fat diet?
So keto can go 1,000 different directions, right? Just like you can be a vegan and eat nothing but vegan cookies, right? Not all vegans are healthy, right? Not all keto is the same.
I
There-
tried keto and it like killed my glycogen stores and I didn't have the supplements to basically fix all the deficiencies.
Yeah.
And so it just crushed me. I tried it for like a month and it was like, oh, I mean, I lost some fat, but it was not, I was just feeling like crap every day.
Yeah. So,
I did it wrong. I did it wrong. It's like the short version.
Yeah.
I want to do it again right, but I also want to figure out what's the quick fix from this. Is this, so you're saying too much fat from meat? Is that as in like cow, eat more fish and eat more chicken?
So it's too much saturated fat and it's too much pro-inflammatory fats. So yeah, eating more fish, eating more nuts. So seeds can be healthy. It's the seed oils that are really bad. Like you should never ever have seed oils, because those are going to be inflammatory, right? So you're like canola oils and grapeseed oils and sunflower oils, those are always inflammatory. Is this stuff you're familiar with already, or?
Sort of. I mean,
I have a handout I can share with you too on which types of fats are good and not good, and which types you can cook with and which types you shouldn't cook with.
Yeah, my wife's gonna be so mad. I mean, she'll be glad I knew this stuff, but she's like,
yeah, but I mean, think about this.
She should do it too.
For the most part, felt fine, and then you're having numbers like this.
I'm Dutch. We don't express ourselves very well.
Which,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's good and bad that you can be mind over matter. But yeah, so between these phospholipids being low, and then the other thing that's going to wreck your efforts if you're trying to be keto is you're really low on a nutrient called carnitine, and you need carnitine to burn fat into energy. So without carnitine, you know, if you're trying to burn fat, it'd be like, you know, somebody put a lock over the furnace and you can't even get the wood in to burn it. Like, you need the carnitine to carry it fat into the cell to burn it.
Wow. Holy cow. Is that why I can't get a six-pack?
It's probably part of it, yeah.
I mean, I'm really serious about this. Like, I've done triathlons and half Ironman. I'd never even had a six-pack during all that. And lived at CrossFit for 6 years and stuff. Never, like, got rid of the muffin top. I mean, it's some of the muffin top, but even at, like, 11, I got down to, like, 11.7% body fat.
Between
and
that
I had
and the amount
muscles.
of inflammation that
And
you
I could do like 40 pull-ups in a row without dropping. And it still didn't, like, do anything. I'm wondering if all this is, it's got to be connected, because my communication between my cells and the ability to bring fat into my cells to burn it is, like, impossible right now.
Yeah, you've got a lot of gaps nutritionally. Your gut is not healthy, and you've got some major inflammatory foods that you didn't realize. So you probably have carried around a puff layer that you didn't even realize.
Fight or flight.
I mean, that's what I knew.
My body's in, like, shock mode, I bet.
I knew that gluten was an issue for me way before I tested for it, right? I tested for it more as, like, a confirmation of myself. But what I notice if I eat gluten, I don't get overt GI issues. I just feel sore and stiff and, like, puffy, basically.
Right. Wow.
So.
Yeah, it's not as direct as you're saying, that you knew, but I definitely can now think about, like, okay, yeah, I have issues for sure if I have too much, like a bunch.
Right, like, you're not gonna die if you don't cut out gluten and dairy, but you're not ever likely gonna feel as good as you could or should feel, because those foods came up through the roof as inflammation for you.
Yeah. Well, but this cancer, I mean, it's one thing to not have a little muffin top. It's another thing to be at risk of cancer and dementia, because I'm not able to move.
I mean, that stuff happens over decades, right?
Right. Well, I know, but it's probably already been compounding for 10 years. So now I'm thinking, like, wow, like, okay, I really don't understand the fat world very well. Like, inflammatory fats, pro-inflammatory fats, and saturated fats. I've got way too much of those. But I don't exactly know what I'm going to do tonight when I get home or tomorrow with my diet. You know what I mean? To immediately change
It's
that.
not hard. Like, you can cook up some fish in a little bit of coconut oil. You can have some veggies. Again, you don't have insulin issues, so you could even have, you know, some sweet potatoes, or, like I said, corn's not a trigger for you, so.
Okay. Gosh, man. This is crazy. Okay, keep going. You really let me in with, like, oh yeah, we got a lot of good stuff here. This is crazy.
I didn't say that. I said it was all fixable.
This is gonna go viral because everyone's gonna be like, check out this CEO's messed up body.
Yeah.
If he can do it.
Do you take a branched chain amino acid when you work out?
No.
Okay. I was just curious because of all the amino acids, like, those are the ones that you were doing pretty good on. I mean, you've at least heard of that term, right?
Yeah.
Branched chain amino acids.
Yeah.
So branched chains are the ones that you need to make and build and repair muscle. But branched chains are only 3 of the amino acids. So that's why some people, if they only take branched chains, they end up depleted of some of the other ones. So I think the bigger reason why you're depleted of some of these amino acids, again, I think it has a lot more to do with your gut health.
Yeah.
Because I just don't think you're assimilating some of this stuff like you would or could if your gut wasn't so inflamed.
Yeah, because I can recover well from a terrible workout. Like, I had one this morning and I was good like 20 minutes later. Interesting.
Do you do anything as far as, like, do you ever do a
I have
recovery
taken
drink
like whey
shake
powder, wait for muscle build.
Dairy.
the dairy.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to switch that. But it is good, especially after strength training, to do some sort of protein within that 30-minute window, because
Okay.
that is when you can really assimilate and do.
After protein or before? Workout, then
Usually
get the
more
protein?
after.
Or protein and then do that? Because I've always done it after the workout.
It makes the most sense after.
Oh, so I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
Okay. Workout and then. Okay. How much protein would be good? Because I usually do like if I do a scoop of like.
Usually 20, 25-ish.
Okay. Okay, cool.
So, but there's a really good plant-based protein that I take that actually has a lot of vitamins and minerals in it.
Yes, please.
So I'll look at that as an option for you too. Because again, my goal at the end of this is I am going to try to make this as easy as I can for you.
Okay. Are we halfway done, or are we like most of the way
we're
done?
most of the way done.
Okay, good, because
Yeah.
we're in an hour. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's the inflammatory fats I told you. And then, yeah, here's the whole gluten test. So you had a bunch of these that were in the red. Those are all the gluten antibodies. So the reason why some people were tested for celiac and they were told they didn't have it, the standard test, like if you went to a gastroenterologist or an immunologist, the standard test only looks at 2 antibodies, these 2.
Okay.
Which you didn't have and a lot of people don't have. But if you look at the rest of this assay, there's almost 3 dozen other antibodies that the immune system can also form against gluten. And if you look at all these other ones, you can see there's quite a few that you have.
Jeez. How many of them are there? So of the 3 dozen I see, I have what?
6,
6
7,
at least?
8, yeah, 8 of them.
That I'm really bad on.
Yeah. But like I said, you don't have the standard 2, which is why if you had gone, I guess the quote-unquote regular route, you likely would have been told that it wasn't an issue for you.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. So not the 2 that they usually check for, which ones? Can you name those?
Delta gliadin and transglutaminase.
Okay. The delta gliadin and transglutaminase. See, I can do that.
Got that?
I can copy your words.
All right.
But 6 others. 7. Actually, it was 8. 8 of them. Wow. So I'm not. Am I in the celiac category? I have celiac.
So based on that blood test, but then also there's a marker in the stool for it on that stool test you did, and that was also
Oh my God.
super high. Which page is that?
What does celiac mean? Because I always made fun of my friend's wife Amy for having celiac.
Well, let's call Amy because she gets to make fun of you now.
Yeah. I'm in trouble.
So these are the 2 gut markers that was in the stool for celiac, and you can see both of them were really, really high.
Oh my gosh. 262 U over L versus 148 should be my number, and then 299, and which is twice as high as it should be.
Yeah. So celiac, if you were to look at a 3-dimensional cross-section of the gut, you have all these 3-dimensional projections of what are called villi.
Yeah.
And what villi effectively do is they triple or quadruple the absorptive surface area.
Yeah.
So what fundamentally happens with celiac, and it is an inflammatory cascade triggered by gluten, it erodes most, if not all, of that 3-dimensional surface. So then your absorptive surface ends up being,
Terrible.
in some cases, a third or a quarter of what it would otherwise be.
And that's
which is
absorbing
why-
what? Nutrients?
That's
and...
why you end up with so many other deficits
Gosh.
as a sequence of
So
that.
all of this is like literally gut bacteria and gluten.
It's a lot of it.
I mean, it's like 80% of these issues.
Probably.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a big difference in the next, probably, I mean, I think there's going to be a big difference even in the first month, but certainly in the next few months.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely got to get rid of this guy. I told you that at the beginning.
The intestinal parasite, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you don't, like I said, you don't have inflammation in your gut. I mean, there are a lot of good things here. So yeah, the only other thing I think I wanted to mention.
Can you explain the quick difference between villi in my gut and the bacteria in my gut and how they're both screwing everything up?
Well, the villi is just the 3-dimensional surface area that your
Of my intestines?
that your body
Okay.
makes. The bacteria, of course, are all the microbes that live
Inside
there.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking like, okay, if the bacteria aren't
Dialed in.
breaking down, because that's all they're basically doing is breaking down nutrients.
Exactly.
And then the villi
And then your absorptive surface
are a
is eroded.
third because it's
Yeah.
eroded.
Yeah, it's not that
it's
shocking.
compounding to be
have,
like a fifth of what normal people can get.
It's not that shocking that you have so many deficits.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. But, I mean...
And when you say gut, it's not just my stomach, it's intestines, stomach, all that, right?
Yeah, your tube. From your mouth to your tail.
All right. We're almost done.
Almost. So the other thing that came back high, and this could have contributed to some degree of how you've been feeling lately, so pyruvic acid is, and this is probably why keto didn't go so well for you, it's part of what they call the glycolytic cycle, which is basically how you break down and utilize sugar to make energy.
Yeah.
Yours was high, which was indicating that you weren't doing a very good job.
Three times as high?
Yeah, of turning carbohydrates into energy. But you can see I underlined two big reasons why that could be. One is bacterial imbalances in the gut, which we've already established you have.
Yeah.
And B vitamin deficiencies, which we've already established you have, right? So what I'm saying is if we fix these other issues, your metabolism in general is going to get far better.
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily saying you have to go strict keto at all, or certainly not even long term. But I would say if it was something that you ever tried to do again, it probably wouldn't be as much of a struggle for you because your body's going to be a lot better at making energy.
Okay. So explain what the acid does again, and if it's high, it's worse at doing what?
It's high, showing that your body is not doing a good job turning carbohydrates into energy.
Ah, okay.
Which is a big deal if you also had markers that showed you weren't turning fat into energy.
Right.
So what uses like 2/3 to 3/4 of all the energy that your body makes in a day is your brain, right? That's why learning new things can be exhausting because your brain uses a ton of energy. So if you're not doing a good job producing energy, yeah, it's going to affect you in like your workouts and your function throughout the day, but realistically it's going to have a big effect on your brain.
Okay.
So.
And so I'm sorry, I'm catching up because I'm writing as I'm going, which is terrible, I know, for video. So the brain takes how much of your energy production?
At least 2/3, if not 3/4, of all the energy that your body makes in a day is used by your brain.
This is insane. I didn't know any of this. Okay.
Yeah. Gotta read your boy Dave's book.
I read Game Changers, but I've only read part of Headstrong. Sorry, Dave. I'm like,
okay.
I only have so many books I can read in a day.
I get it. My pile is greater than my capacity too.
Yeah, especially being in Genius Network. Everyone's got a book and they're all good.
It's true. So.
I read a lot. Just.
I think that's most of my. Oh, here's what's gonna interest you. These are. Remember how I said your markers for dopamine and norepinephrine and serotonin and melatonin and all that came out fine. That's what all these metabolites are. They're from those neurotransmitters.
Got it.
So
okay,
it
good.
showed up as an imbalance in brain chemistry, but I think it was mostly coming from your gut.
Yeah. All right, folks. I got a lot of work to do. What do I do now?
Well, I'm going to give you...
Before we turn this off.
I mean, obviously on your end, you're going to have to cut out gluten and dairy is probably the biggest thing, and learn more about which types of fats are better to eat.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to give you a regimen. One axis of it's going to be more of a short-term intervention to try to rebuild and restore your gut health. So that's going to be more of like an 8-week strategy.
Yeah.
But then the other axis of it is going to be restoring some of these nutrient deficits.
And the B vitamins and all the others. And nootropic?
Mm-hmm.
Are those two separate, nootropic and the vitamin stuff? Or is there stuff?
I mean, I would categorize them all together.
Okay. All right, let's
and then,
do this.
I mean, we could retest all of this stuff, or if not, I mean, I can prioritize. There's a few things that I would definitely retest in the next 3 to 4 months.
I say after, like, towards the end of the 100 days, before we finish, like, maybe 80 days in, so we can have a meeting at the end.
That'd be reasonable.
Like, let's do this for 2.5, 3 months, and then check.
Yeah, or you could do it if you wanted at the end of the 100 days to see.
Yeah, let's do it.
What happened.
All right, turn this off. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For, I think, saving my life into 15 years.
Probably.